What if the strangest things people report seeing are not the mystery, but what happens to those reports afterward? This is Unexplained News Update, and I'm Reese Halden. Today we are moving through a wide landscape of modern mystery culture. We start with one of Australia's most famous UFO cases, then check in on what the Pentagon actually found after a century of looking. From there, we get into how AI is making ghost videos harder to trust, why real archaeology keeps getting dressed up as alien evidence, what is driving a wave of prophecy content online right now, and finally, why some glowing sea clips are a lot more natural than they look. 6 stories, one common thread: the gap between what people see, what they believe, and what the evidence actually supports. Let's get into it. We are starting with one of the most famous UFO stories in Australia, a case that still refuses to fade, 60 years after it happened. On April 6, 1966, something was reportedly seen in the sky above Westall High School in Clatton, South Melbourne. Students and teachers described a shiny, metallic, saucer-shaped object. Witnesses estimated it was roughly 12 to 15 feet wide. Some said they saw smaller objects nearby. The craft allegedly descended toward a nearby field, then rose again and disappeared. What made this case stand out was not just the object. It was the number of people who said they saw it. This was not one person standing alone in a field. It was a school full of witnesses, students and teachers alike, all pointing at the same thing in the sky. After the sighting, some witnesses claimed things took a strange turn. According to their accounts, men in uniforms arrived. Cameras were allegedly confiscated. Some witnesses said they were told to stay quiet. Burnt grass was reportedly found in the area where the object was said to have landed. These claims of an official response and official silence have never been independently confirmed. And it is important to be clear about that. No government agency has ever acknowledged the incident in a way that explains what was seen. No definitive explanation has been offered. The case sits, as it always has, in that uncomfortable space between a credible report and an unresolved mystery. What keeps Westall alive is not just the unexplained object. It is the community around it. Witnesses have spent decades saying they saw something real. Their insistence and the lack of any official answer is exactly what turns a sighting into a legend. Westall endures because the people who were there never stopped believing they saw something real. From that legendary schoolyard case, we move to the modern institutional version of the same question. What do the authorities actually know? If Westall shows how a mystery can live inside community memory, the next story shows how governments try to formally classify that kind of mystery, and what they find when they look. The U.S. Department of Defense, working through its All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, known as AARO, has conducted a sweeping review of unidentified aerial phenomena reports going back roughly a century. The conclusion is not that aliens visited Earth. The conclusion is that the evidence does not support that claim. That sounds simple, but the details matter. Many of the cases reviewed turned out to have ordinary explanations: misidentified aircraft, weather effects, optical illusions, or gaps in reporting systems. These are not cover-ups. They are the kinds of errors that show up when people observe something unexpected and try to make sense of it quickly. Then there are the cases that remain unresolved, and here is where the language gets careful. Unresolved does not mean confirmed. It means the available data was incomplete. Sensors did not capture enough. Witnesses disagreed. The records were fragmentary. An open case is not proof of something extraordinary. It is proof that the investigation hit a wall. What this review actually tells us is that the government takes these reports seriously enough to study them, but seriously enough to also say, we do not have evidence of non-human intelligence. That distinction matters because the disclosure community often frames the same incomplete data as proof that something is being hidden. The Pentagon story is not a revelation. It is a reminder that uncertainty has limits, and incomplete data is not the same thing as confirmation. The debate remains stuck between what is unresolved and what people want that to mean. And once we are thinking about evidence quality, the next problem is what happens when the footage itself can no longer be trusted. The problem with ghost videos used to be simple. You would watch a clip, spot the obvious trick, and move on. That is getting harder, not because ghosts became more real, but because the tools for faking them became much better. Ghost clips on TikTok are increasingly using AI-assisted filters, motion overlays, and compositing techniques that blend fake elements into real footage in ways that are genuinely difficult to detect. This is not the shaky hand cam effect from 10 years ago. These are smooth, well-lit, convincing clips that can pass a casual viewing without triggering obvious alarm. The deeper issue is not any single fake clip. It is what this does to all paranormal footage. Once viewers know that convincing fakes exist and are circulating freely, the whole category of caught-on-camera evidence starts to collapse. Real footage and synthetic footage begin to look the same. And when everything looks equally suspicious, trust breaks down across the board. Experts point to provenance as the key. That means asking, where did this clip come from? Who originally filmed it? And can the source file be checked? Metadata, original recording devices, and context all matter more than the visual content alone. Organizations working on content authenticity have been pushing for better digital watermarking and verification tools, but those systems are not yet widely in use on major platforms. The ghost clip problem is really a media literacy problem. It is not about paranormal belief specifically. It is about what happens to any visual category when synthetic versions become easy to produce and hard to distinguish. Once synthetic hauntings become easy to make, every future ghost clip starts with a credibility deficit. And once you see how easily video can be manipulated, the same problem shows up in a very different place, the way people reinterpret real discoveries on the ground. There is no new mainstream archaeological evidence that aliens visited ancient civilizations. That sentence needs saying clearly, because the online space around archaeology right now suggests otherwise. Ancient astronaut theories are surging again, and the pattern driving them is familiar. A real discovery gets made. Researchers publish findings about a structure, an artifact, or a site. Then, very quickly, that same discovery gets lifted out of its original context, reframed with a new caption or thumbnail and presented as proof that ancient humans had outside help. The problem with this pattern is not just that it is wrong, it is that it quietly insults the people who actually built these things. Ancient civilizations were remarkably capable. They developed engineering, mathematics, astronomy, and social organization across thousands of years. When someone insists that a pyramid or a stone monument could only have been built with alien assistance, they are saying that the humans who did the work were not smart enough to have done it themselves. That is not a compliment to ancient cultures, it is the opposite. The online format makes this easier. A short clip or thumbnail does not have room for context. It has room for a question. Could this be alien? And questions like that are cheap to ask and expensive to fully answer. Legitimate researchers at institutions like the Archaeological Institute of America spend careers studying these sites. That nuance disappears in a 10-second clip. Real archaeology is genuinely fascinating. The actual story of how ancient people organized labor, moved stone, tracked stars, and built lasting structures is more interesting than the alien version. The alien version just arrives first. The mystery is real, but the alien conclusion usually comes long before the evidence does. And when people are already primed to read hidden meaning into the past, it is not a big leap to start doing the same thing with the future. If the archaeology story showed how the past gets rewritten, this one shows how the future gets rewritten too. Right now, there is a notable surge in prophecy content claiming that April 2026 is a uniquely significant moment. Predictions are being made by psychics, remote viewers, and prophecy channels across multiple platforms. To be clear, There is no verified evidence that this month is cosmically or geopolitically special in any way that a credible source has identified. What is happening is a feedback loop between anxiety, online communities, and content creators who have learned that framing uncertainty as prophecy builds a very loyal audience. Here is why it works. Vague forecasts are very flexible. If a creator says something major is coming in April, almost anything that happens can be claimed as confirmation afterward. A political event, a natural disaster, a strange news story. All of it becomes evidence. The prediction is not tested by whether it was specific and accurate. It is reinforced by whatever unfolds. Community pressure matters too. Inside these groups, members share examples that seem to confirm the forecast and quietly set aside the ones that do not. This is not necessarily cynical. Many participants genuinely believe they are tracking something real. But the structure of the community makes it very hard to disprove a prediction, because disconfirming evidence simply does not circulate as freely as confirming evidence. Monetization keeps the cycle going. Prophecy content that generates engagement also generates revenue. That creates an incentive to keep predicting, keep reinterpreting, and keep the audience in a state of anticipatory tension. Research organizations studying misinformation have noted that prediction culture often peaks during periods of genuine social stress, which makes sense. When the real world feels chaotic, a voice that sounds like it has already decoded the chaos is very appealing. In prophecy culture, the prediction is often less important than the feeling that someone has already figured out what is coming. After all that looking for hidden meaning in history and events, the final story returns us to something simpler, seeing something strange in nature and assuming it must be supernatural. The internet loves a glowing ocean mystery, and right now, clips of what some viewers are calling bioluminescent humanoid figures in the sea are spreading widely. They look strange. They look eerie. Some of them look genuinely hard to explain at first glance, but the best explanation for most of them is a natural one. Bioluminescent organisms are real, common, and genuinely weird. Marine creatures ranging from single-celled plankton to larger animals produce their own light. Under the right conditions, that light can create glowing outlines, trails, and shapes in dark water. Add low-light camera sensors, wide-angle lenses, slow motion, and some cropping, and a patch of glowing plankton can start to look like a figure. Researchers at organizations like NOAA and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute have documented bioluminescent phenomena for decades. What they describe is often breathtaking on its own terms. A wave full of glowing plankton, a fish trailing light, a patch of ocean that pulses with blue-green fire. None of this requires a supernatural explanation. The problem is that captions and editing arrive before the science does. A clip gets posted with a suggestive title. It gets shared thousands of times before anyone checks the location, the conditions, or the source footage. By the time a marine biologist could weigh in, the narrative is already set. This is the same pattern we have seen across this episode, but in a gentler form. The footage here is not necessarily fabricated the way AI ghost clips are. It is more likely real footage of a real phenomenon just named incorrectly. The glow is real. The humanoid reading is not the strongest explanation, and that is actually a nice place to land. The ocean is strange enough without needing a mystery that science cannot support. That is everything for today's Unexplained News Update. 6 stories, 1 through line. Ambiguity is easy to find, and it is even easier to turn into something bigger than the evidence supports. We started in a schoolyard in Melbourne in 1966, moved through a government review that found incomplete data rather than alien proof, looked at what AI is doing to the credibility of visual evidence, and ended up in an ocean full of natural light that gets mistaken for something else entirely. The pattern across all of it is the same. A gap in knowledge becomes a space where belief can grow. That is not always wrong. Genuine mysteries exist, but the strongest version of curiosity is the kind that keeps asking questions even after someone offers a satisfying answer. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can follow Unexplained News Update wherever you listen to podcasts. Leaving a rating or a review also helps other people find the show, and I genuinely appreciate it. I'm Reese Halden. Stay curious, stay careful, and I'll talk to you next time.